Hi, welcome to Platonics. I'm Jords.
I'm Rocky, and this is the show where we pull bits of fiction apart into their constituent atoms and then put them back together into something that makes sense for you to, run through at your role-playing game table. Jords, I've got a real wild card pick for you this month.
Go on.
Are you ready?
What do you got?
Sports.
Nope.
Movies.
Maybe. Okay, my knee-jerk reaction is, what right do either of us have to talk about sports?
Movies. And the answer is a lot. We're talking, I'm talking Mighty Ducks. I'm talking Field of Dreams. I'm talking, probably the biggest one to come out this decade, and one that I plan to refer to a lot over the next hour or so. So, spoilers. Ted Lasso, which is basically the sports movie writ large. Arguably, my namesake, Rocky, sports movie. Karate Kid, probably also a sports movie. I'm Rocky, you're the Karate Kid.
I'll take that. The sports movie that I probably have the most familiarity with is Bring It On. Cheerleading is a sport.
I mean, look, I think anything can be a sports movie if you believe in it. If you just believe. But we'll get to that in a sec. Sports movies are they're such a specific genre. And I think they're a really good one for us to cover on the show because we are all about structure, and so are sports movies. Like every sports movie has exactly the same shape, and we know that shape is coming, and yet we still go and we watch the movie anyway. And I think that's a really interesting thing to have a chat about, how we sort of capture that structure for a game.
It's a really good point, right? The structure's so tight. The sports and the players are just the content, but they all fill the same buckets, movie to movie.
Exactly. Like these movies are literally all the same, and you know what is going to happen going into them. You sit down and you know that these characters, these teams, whatever they are, you know that they're basically just going to have a straight up hero's journey. They are going to have an early high, and then a 2/3 of the way through low, and then they're going to come through and win it at the end. And
they'll do it with the power of teamwork.
With the power of teamwork and love and believing in themselves. And
maybe the friends were the friends we made along the way.
the real win was the friends we made along the way. Yes, that's what we're talking about. We're talking the plucky underdog story. And I'm just really interested in how we turn that into a game. So look, this one could be a little bit fast and loose. It's a movie genre that I've seen a fair bit of, but look, as you alluded to, neither of us are necessarily the people you would turn to for advice about actual sports, so we may fall down there. I acknowledge we're working 2 levels of abstraction deep, where we're making a game about movies, about sports. Could run into some roadblocks there, but I think it could be a fun one. So we're going to give it a go.
I think that I've got straight up just an interesting one we're going to have to work through here, and that's with such a really tightly scripted series of events, how do we leave enough room to play in there?
I think it's worth zooming out a little bit and looking at the structure of these movies, right? So we almost always are building this thing around a formal competition of some kind. And it's a formal competition. There is a winner and a loser. And usually, in order to give us a little bit of texture to that story, there are multiple rounds, right? So that's fundamentally what we're dealing with here, is a story that has, I would say, at minimum 3 rounds. I think you have to be able to come in, have an early success, then have a failure, then bring it home for the win. So we've got a structure that is a couple of contests and then the interstitial spaces between them, and each contest has a winner or a loser, and then we end with a grand finale, and that's more or less the end of the movie. Then outside of that, we have all of this other stuff going on off the field, off the pitch. I think I think sports have pitches. I don't know. We have all this stuff going on outside of the sport that affects what goes on inside the sport. We have these like tensions and dramas that play out in those in-between spaces, but then also get expressed, I guess, in the actual sport itself. Yeah, it's a really tight structure, and I don't think it's a coincidence that all of these sports movies are based around sports that have multiple rounds.
Yep.
Because the going in and trying again against a new team, that is the stuff that gives you the back and forth, the texture, the ebb and flow, the win and loss, the literal highs and lows of these movies. And probably this is why people watch actual sports, right?
Like, I can't comment on that.
But like that's what you get out of it, is like every week is a new thing, and you get these highs and lows, and that to a human, you know, our sense of narrative is very compelling.
I'm still just scanning through the list of sports movies I know, and I've got Dodgeball, I've got The Longest Yard, the American football one with Adam Sandler, but he's in prison.
Yeah, I literally can't think of any of these that we've talked about so far that don't have this structure of like underdogs to like heroes at the end.
I mean, oh God, The Longest Yard even explicitly says it. At the beginning, Adam Sandler is told to recruit a team for a confidence game because he's actually putting together the team to play against the guards, and the warden wants the guards to win. So he's like, oh yeah, I put together a shit team that the guards will win against, and it will boost their confidence when they go up against rival prison football teams. So it's like literally structuring it in such a way that you have the like, oh, we get the early win, and then we get our comeuppance because of hubris or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we learn to be friends, and then we have a nail-biting grand final or regionals or nationals or whatever the thing is.
Yeah, regionals and nationals.
We all know what they are.
Yeah, we definitely. What is a regional? What is a national?
So, lay it out for me. What are the elements that they all have apart from that like structured game beat?
So there's a couple of things. They all have a group of players who start as underdogs, right? Like, we are not interested in hearing a story about people who are already winners. We are not interested in hearing about the people who are the favorites, right? Like, we want to hear underdogs. And I think as part of that, there has to be some element of someone new has come in, right? Like we have an underdog team. They're kind of stagnant. There's some new element that gets introduced, and one of the first things we do with our team is like we get to know them, but we are also doing some like rebuilding and some shifting of paradigms and some changing of ideas.
All right, I have an instant counterpoint for a subversion of this trope, and it's Bring It On, because they are the best, but then they find out that actually in the change of leadership, they're only the best because they were cheating the whole time.
Ooh.
So I think that's a really good example of it.
It's a subversion of it, but it's also...
Now they have to prove that they're really the best.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the only way to do that is to get the actual best people in to compete against.
Exactly. It's wild to me that your go-to on this for this whole episode is going to be Bring It On, but like, let's roll with it. So yeah, look, I think that's our starting point. We have a team of underdogs, and we join them at the point where something starts to change.
Status quo has shifted. A new defense attorney has recently been assigned 500 hours of community service, and that looks like coaching his old team.
Yeah. Like, the new boss who won the club off her ex-partner in the divorce has hired a coach from the US to deliberately run the team into the ground even further. We touched on it already, but I think that structure is the second thing we need. So you have to have a structured competition. You have to have some kind of ladder that the team is climbing. So there has to be the same way there's a real quantifiable like win and loss in the competition, that has to result in quantifiable like moving up or moving down the ladder. You are judged entirely by your position, sort of respective to your peers. That's the thing that gives our story some tension, right? Is moving up and moving down.
That's the drive for the players, right? Like, no longer are we going to be at the bottom of the ladder. The thing that I love about the ladder concept as well is all the sports movies that I'm racking my brain to think of right now absolutely use it regardless of what the real world equivalent of point scoring is. So it's like, if you win this game, you just go up ladder. Ladder is easy to understand. It's not like we have a dominance matrix, and because you beat that team and they beat that team, that means that places you in between these two. No, we don't care about any of that. It's win this fight, go up ladder.
And like in the movies, it never makes sense, because it's always just like, oh, you are against whoever is next up on the ladder, and you swap places with them, and you just like work your way up. I'm like, that's not how sports fixtures work, but it doesn't matter. It's like you just fight whoever is next up.
That's how it works when you have main team syndrome, where all the other teams aren't swapping around positions on the ladder. Only you versus other teams.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. Like, you can tell that these guys are the main characters because they're the only team who ever moves around on the ladder, independent of being like pushed. So yeah, we've got a team of underdogs. Mm-hmm. We've got a ladder that they have to climb. Mm-hmm. And you have this essentially binary outcome of these matches, and then an essentially binary sort of thing that can happen after that, which is a move up or a move down. And then you have the time in between. And what happens in between is getting ready for the next match. And sometimes that looks like things like training and montages and things like that. But I think what makes these movies tick is that a lot of that stuff it's psychological. It's personal growth, right? It's
forging bonds with your teammates. It's learning to trust again.
The team is learning to work together as a team, making friends,
sharing the spotlight, not playing for yourself, but playing for the group.
Exactly. All those things we want to see from our players. And is he talking about the role-playing game, or is he talking about the sport? What? But yeah, there's this non-sport stuff as well. And I think that's what sets these movies apart from, I suppose, a real sport where people don't necessarily go through character growth in between matches. And if they do, we're not necessarily privy to it. And it's the fact that character growth outside of the game drives better performance in the game, right? Like,
you become a more holistic person, and that makes you better at the sport.
Daniel-san doesn't win Karate Kid by becoming better at karate. He wins it by, like, essentially the thing that gives him power is as his relationship with Miyagi grows, and as he like comes to understand the parts of karate that aren't the kicks and the punches, the parts of karate that are like rooted in philosophy and mindfulness and that kind of stuff. Like, as he comes to understand that is what lets him win the karate competition at the end. It's not the fact that he got actually any better at karate. So in a way that is perhaps a diversion from real sport, you have these non-practice things that really feed into players' success and team success. And again, I think we see Ted Lasso actually dig into what that means in the season where they have a sports psychologist come in, which I think it's the second season.
Season.
And they have a sports psychologist come in, and everyone does some personal growth with the sports psychologist except Ted. And so like, then Ted's arc becomes like learning to do some personal growth for himself instead of trying to inspire growth in others.
That's the equivalent in my mind of the Dragon Ball Z things escalate, because season 1 is Ted comes in and through relentless positivity and making these young men be better versions of themselves, he puts them in a pretty good spot, and ultimately it doesn't succeed. And then it's like, okay, well, we can't do that again for season 2. So what do? We bring in the next tier up. It's not just a feel-good person. It's a person that makes you confront the feels bad things.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like, it's not enough to just believe, we actually have to deal with our problems. Mm-hmm. The other thing that second season does, or that Ted Lasso does really well, is that it doesn't give us the win at the end of the first season. Like, it actually, the whole season is about not getting kicked out of the competition, and then they get kicked out of the competition anyway. And that kind of sets you up for the second season. And so on a macro scale, the like 3 seasons of Ted Lasso are a sports movie, but they're a sports movie that's like 90 hours long.
But it's fractal sports movie, right? Because
yeah, it's a sports movie made of smaller sports movies.
When we zoom into the end of season 1, I think they generally hit it masterfully, where you're like, okay, so the thing here, it's not winning the competition, it's just being able to stay in the competition. So that's our stake. we still have this like hard threshold where if they lose, they get bumped down the ladder over the edge into the ladder below. And you're like, well, that's not going to happen. They'll win. But then they don't. And the reason why they don't win is because Ted mentored the player that scores the winning goal against them. So it's like, oh, the power of friendship worked, but for the other team.
Yeah.
And then instantly you can see like, well, season 2 has to have that person come back. How do they wrangle that? And they go through his personal growth journey to end up back on the original team so they can tap into that power of friendship again.
Exactly right.
So I thought that was genuinely very well done. Like structured in a way that subverts but reinforces over the long run the tropes that we're talking about right now.
So yeah, I think that's our like overall sort of, I guess, plot. The other thing that's really interesting that kind of builds off that is the characters, right? So it's interesting that you brought up Ted Lasso there because or the I guess the idea of the star player. We kind of have these archetypes, especially within the team sports ones, not so much for the individual sports ones, but for the team sports. We kind of have these archetypes of like the star player and the the rookie like who has yet to learn how great they are, the gruff one who is has to like learn to show their feelings, and
the fourth one is the catchphrase player. They have like one thing that when they pop up on screen, they do their catchphrase and everyone's like, ah.
Yep.
It's what's his name from Ted Lasso? Danny, the guy that runs out, right, says his own name.
Yeah. Football is life.
Football is life.
Yeah, so you have all of these archetypes within the team as well, who again in a lot of cases are like little like cardboard cutouts. Like we could describe the team as like there's a star player who doesn't like to share the limelight, and there's a rookie who doesn't realize how great they are, and there's like the gruff defender, and it's like I could be describing any one of a dozen movies or shows with that kind of line.
They fit really clean buckets, and the dynamics between them are easily established, and you can clearly see how they can grow over the course of a session of play.
Yeah, and so that's I guess the other thing is that the flaw that each player has is it's really obvious what they need to do to address it. So it's like, yeah, the star player needs to learn to share the limelight, and the rookie needs to like learn some confidence. It's like, so there's always a really obvious remedy to whatever their flaw is, and they are basically just like a flaw or a trait of some kind. And the movie is about like, do we get to address all of these people's flaws and problems before we get to the finale?
Now there's one often used timing trick that happens here, where it'll be like, we didn't get to them all by the finale, but there's half time, and that's our last interstitial space to resolve the thing, and then we win in the final half.
Yeah, I guess that kind of brings me to my last thing, which is really about pacing or tension, whatever you want to call it. But because even though we know going to sit down and watch Mighty Ducks, like we know that the underdogs are going to win, but there still has got to be some tension. There have to be moments where it looks like it's not going to succeed, and that half time during the finale and everything looks like it's gone wrong is like a classic. And again, it's why Ted Lasso is so great at this, I think, because it subverts that, and you think they're going to somehow like pull it out in the finale, and then it's like, oh no, they lose and they get relegated. Like, despite the fact that these things are utterly formulaic and the characters are utterly formulaic, we still want to see them, and they still have that tension somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really gets at the heart of why this genre is interesting to me, because like so many fluff, like feel-good-esque type genres, it's so predictable, and yet we absolutely eat it up, and we love to watch it, and we love to feel those feelings. And I think,
that whole time you're sitting there watching it, you're building towards the conclusion that is there from the beginning of the film. Before you even sat down to watch it, it's there. And for me, it's sitting there being like, are they going to play it straight? How are they going to, what are they going to twist to give it a little bit more pizzazz? And from
and
my favorite example, Bring It On's great at this, because they find out at the end that actually they weren't the best, but through the personal growth, coming second is good enough because they set themselves up for the best possible competition.
Yeah.
They didn't win because they cheated. They came second because they actually did their best and found out someone else was better with them, but the competition was what mattered.
Yeah, how we define success doesn't necessarily have to be. If we're playing it completely straight, of course it's getting to the top of the ladder and winning the grand final. But like, we have all these interesting alternate definitions of success because this genre has been around for so long that we get to kind of play with. And we also have all these interesting like ways of getting there. You know, there's tricks that they will pull out to kind of snag the win. So it might be like a new technique that they've learned. It might be like a piece of teamwork. But equally likely it can be someone remembers an obscure rule, right? Or like something happens off the field that like throws the other team. Like there's all of these different ways that the growth that we've seen throughout the movie, throughout the season, there's all these ways that can come into play, and it's not always, and then they learn to play together properly as a team and then they won. It's like, well, they don't always have to win as long as you set that like success criteria up before the end so it doesn't feel like a rug pull. And it also doesn't necessarily have to be straight up they were better at the game. There can be some other stuff going on as well. The bit in Ted Lasso where it's like, and then they win the game and it's basically because Ted finally understands the offside rule. Like, that's a big thing. And it's been a recurring thing throughout the show that he doesn't understand. He's like, no, I think they were offside. And that becomes the like pivotal point of that game, is that player was offside, and that's this growth point. But it's not necessarily an incredible play that was facilitated by teamwork. It's like, no, someone else has grown in a different way.
So I think that's where we have the room to play, right?
Exactly.
Like, we're not just tightly scripted to be like, we have to follow these beats and we have to have the final match set up in such a way that our players will win. We have all these other different conditions by which we can say, you can introduce these elements and maybe you win, or maybe you win off the field.
Right. So like, yeah, maybe it's how we define winning and how we get to that win that becomes the interesting space to play in for, I guess, the folks who make the movies, but also for us when we're turning this into a game.
All right. So if I can just quickly recap this, sports movies, not about the sport. The end.
Yes.
Cool. Great. Got it.
Also not necessarily always about a sport at all. See,
the thick throng of dance movies from the like early to mid 2000s. Sports movies?
Look, they're a structured competition with like structured rounds, and they proceed in a linear fashion up the ladder.
Dead Poets Society. Sports movie?
Dead Poets Society. Okay, you'll have to sell me on this one.
Right, you got a team, which is a class of stagnant young men.
Uh-huh.
You have a new teacher comes in.
Yep.
Upends the status quo.
Yep.
And all of these individuals are going on like personal development journeys to the point where they feel like they can overcome the system upon which they've been subjected to.
Yeah, I think what's missing is the structured competitions.
Yeah, you're right about that. There's no poetry slams or such in Dead Poets Society.
There's no poetry slams. However, School of Rock, I will accept, is a sports movie.
Oh, School of Rock was next on my list.
School of Rock, absolutely a sports movie. Which, okay. Here's my nuclear take.
You can play it in A Quiet Year.
We'll get to A Quiet Year, don't you worry. Scott Pilgrim is a sports movie.
All right, we have because they repeated rounds. All right,
yep, where every time he like goes through either a round of the band competition or fights an ex, like that's we have this like competition.
Structured comp.
New person who comes in is Ramona.
He was pretty stagnant to begin with as well.
And we already know that Scott's the best fighter in the province. Like, the thing that's keeping him from Ramona is not his ability to fight. It's his ability
to know himself.
Self-actualize.
Yeah.
Scott learned the power of self-respect. Like, Scott Pilgrim. It's a sports movie. Fight me in the comments. great sports movies of the past, such as Field of Dreams, The Longest Yard, Scott Pilgrim, Bring It On, Pitch
And
Perfect,
Dodgeball. I've never seen
School
Pitch
of
Perfect.
Rock.
Pitch Perfect's got to be one, right? Isn't that about them going to regionals or something?
Yeah, I think they go to regional. Look, it's been a while since I watched it.
All right, I've never seen it. High School Musical, sports movie.
I think he actually does play sport in it, but I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's missing that structured competition. If we were being boring, we would call the episode Structured Competition Films. But
That's where we abstracted so far away that there's no fun anymore.
I love a piece of structured competition media.
Guys, did you see this summer's new structured competition film?
Blockbuster structured competition.
It has actor that you like and supporting actor that you like. And they're going to engage in plot that you know, but enjoy anyway. Okay, all right. So we've just solved about a third of films.
Yeah.
I can't think of any horror that is sports movie. Alien certainly isn't sports movie. Predator's not sports movie.
No,
Predator's not sports movie. It's not structured. It's unstructured combat.
Isn't it a sports movie for the Predator?
Yeah, but like he's just free for alling, you know. It's Unreal Tournament deathmatch for him. There's no like
he gets
repeated
killed at
rounds.
the end and probably learns something about himself along the way. Predator is a sports movie. I'm calling that.
I will fight you on that. That's absolutely your hottest take. Sometimes you have hot takes that are genuinely well accepted opinions. That one is not. You have offended me.
The other one I had in my notes actually, as far as actually fascinating examples of this once you realize what it's doing, is Supergiant Games' Pyre. 2 episodes in a row that we've talked about a Supergiant Games game, because they're very good. But Pyre, you're basically in hell and you have to complete, in quote marks, the rights. But the rights is basically just basketball. And your triumvirate of heroes has to complete a certain number of rights. And then the triumvirate who is at the top of the ladder at the end gets to leave hell, essentially.
If you get that 3-pointer on the buzzer, you get out of hell.
Pretty much. And in between, you have, in actually what I think is a really, really elegant illustration of the concept. In between, it's essentially an interactive novel. So like the game itself switches between 2 completely distinct gameplay modes, and one is a like very heavily modified, but it's essentially gameplay wise, it's those like soccer games where you're kicking passing the ball around and then assuming control of whichever player has the ball. It's that, but like with fantasy tones, and it's real time. It's quite dynamic. It's got pretty rigorous rules. You have players with particular abilities that they get to execute. And then in between, it's very much like an interactive fiction game. It's a dialogue simulator. It's you talking to the characters and learning more about them. That then has mechanical effects later on the games and on which players end up being allowed to ascend. Yeah, it's just like a really neat. You don't look at it and think it's a sports movie, but Pyre is actually mechanically exactly what you would do if you were trying to gamify a sports movie. And I think looking at that as distinct from, for example, an actual soccer game, right, like FIFA.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between Pyre and FIFA is the difference between sports and a sports movie.
All right, so we are Platonics. We are a Supergiant Games podcast.
We adapt Supergiant games into movies? No, hold on.
We request Supergiant Games to build games that kind of relate to movies that we can deconstruct to be about role-playing games. And sometimes sports.
All right. So that's what we're working with.
Quick, snappy recap. Legitimate recap this time. We have a team of plucky underdogs who want to do better but are held back by the status quo. Something has changed and allows them the ability to grow as individuals and ascend the ladder, or some equivalent of not get eliminated. There's
to achieve an undefined or appropriately defined victory end state that may or may not relate to their position on the ladder.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple of other teams in this competition for them to go up against in some sort of structured format, but the competition, the game itself is not the thing that matters so much as the development of the characters and their arcs along that journey. We just have these anchored points in time where they get to test their abilities and see how well they're doing.
Yeah, when we have this series of like win-loss conflicts, but the real juice of the character development and plot development happen in between those contests.
And I've just now thought of, I swear I've seen this in a film, but I can't pinpoint which one it is. But the hero team loses the semi-finals, but it turns out the team that beat them was cheating and is thus disqualified and still allows our team to go through to the finals. So we still have the potential for a downbeat that progresses you forward. Do you know which movie I'm talking about?
I don't know which movie you're talking about, but that is a plot point in Monsters University.
I've not seen that.
Which I've just realized is also a sports movie. There's like a series of like scaring games, and there is exactly that plot point. Like they are at the bottom of the ladder, they're about to get eliminated, and then they're like, oh shoot, the team who won were cheating. I guess you get to go through to the next round after all.
So yeah,
that's when they get their like
some gimme just to keep it going.
They get their second chance to actually pull together as a team, because in the first one they were like, it's very much the like star players hogging the spotlight, and that's why they're like, no, the whole team has to run the gauntlet. The whole team has to make it to the end, and so that's their galvanizing moment.
All right, this is leading towards a structural element that I think we might need to prep. Let's jump into that. All right, we're building this out for play at the table.
Yep.
I feel like this could be a very good 1 to 3 session game. I think you could probably do it in one session, but if you want to have like a decent amount of role play time between the games, probably want just a bit more time under the curve.
Yeah, weirdly, I think the more I think about it, the more I think of our previous episodes, the one it has the closest bearing on is when we talked about Mean Girls, and we were like, this is absolutely a one shot. And then
Mean Girls, the more we a sports movie.
Is Mean Girls a sports movie? In this essay, I will.
Mathletes, structured competition, prom.
I mean, the prom is the final.
Yeah, the parties are like the matches along the way, building towards You've convinced me.
You could make the case, but no. The same way with that one, we started out with like, this is definitely a one shot, and by the end of the conversation, we were like, oh no, this is definitely a thing where like each party is basically a whole session, and we're doing most of our like or a lot of maneuvering in the lead up to that, and between games almost. I think this is one where like actually the more time we give it for all of this in between stuff to happen, the more fun we're going to have. Because the juice is not in the sports matches, it's in the drama in between.
The interpersonal conflict, yep.
So yeah, I think a couple of sessions is probably what we're aiming for with this one.
And just like Mean Girls, we're going to put together a nice easy ladder. It's just instead of social popularity this time, it's position in sports.
Yeah. And I remember last time we were like, oh, we're going to need to come up with some kind of metaphor for like what counts as a win or a loss in a particular scenario that moves you up or down the social hierarchy. This time it's literally like, did you win or did you lose?
We could count a win as a win and a loss as a loss. That's novel.
You could be onto something there. What if we counted losses as wins and wins as losses? What if draws were...
Oh, that's a new sports movie twist. We could build a sports movie. We could write the screenplay for this.
Well, I think there is one. I'm sure there's one.
No, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, you're right.
All right. So we have a ladder. That's prepped ahead of time. We have a couple of other teams. Probably like... I wouldn't prep one team to be the rival team from the beginning. I would let the players choose which characters they hated the most, and then that would become the rival team.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I'm like, the rival team is an important element, but I think it's going to feel more real if the players get to choose that rivalry.
I've done this before with rival adventuring parties, where I've introduced a bunch of different adventuring parties, and then the players just hate one of them heaps. And I'm like, great, I'll reintroduce just them.
No reason that you can easily discern. Yeah.
Oh, I know it was because the leader of this one had excellent hair. And I hated him for
I
it.
hate that guy. I think rivals also give us another win condition that is not necessarily winning, right? It can become a season about just making sure that we finish before the rivals do, or like above the rivals on the
That's
ladder.
a real good point, yeah.
So that just gives us, I guess, a little win-loss, like a victory condition, a win condition affordance for us as game masters is.
But I don't know that necessarily needs to be made explicit to the players. So they can see the ladder and know that getting to the top is the win. But you have in your back pocket, maybe the win was the friends you made along the way. Maybe it was beating the rivals. Maybe it was not being eliminated by the competition. And as play shapes up, you can message that to make it obvious depending on the uncertainty of how the outcomes actually fall.
Yeah.
So you've got it in the back pocket, but you message it so that the players understand how the stakes have changed and what they're really battling for when it comes down to the wire in the last match.
Yeah. Okay, so
Do we have to pick a sport?
make one up.
We call it handball, football, chest ball,
Torso ball,
faceball.
ass ball,
Maybe it's about not getting hit by the ball.
dodgeball.
Damn it! Why are all the good sports taken?
Look, yes, I think we do have to pick a sport. And I think that's actually, you've touched on a really interesting point there, which is it needs to feel authentic, but you don't just want it to turn into narrating a soccer match that's only happening in your head, right? Like that's a different game.
Yeah, like for me, the sport is absolutely maybe third tier. So I want that to be resolved in pretty much a single role. The sport gets almost no screen time. I want that to be super truncated. I want the fallout from the sport to be where we spend most of our playtime.
Yeah.
So if we're talking like a 3-hour session, maybe 15 to 20 minutes total is spent on sport.
So I have a couple of thoughts on this front. Firstly, I'm going to want some kind of mechanical way to make this sport happen, right? There's a couple of things I want in there. Firstly, there has to be an element of chance. You have to be able to lose when you thought you were going to win and win when you thought you were going to lose. Like that's a pretty key part of the arc. We do also have to have some texture within the match itself, right? I don't think we can just have a single role. I think we want some kind of like
Are you talking a skill challenge?
Look, it could be a skill challenge.
Are you talking structured content role?
A structured content role? That's my favorite kind of role. No, look, it probably is something very similar to a skill challenge. This many successes before this many failures would be a good starting point. Where I actually went was the third thing I want to bring in is you have to have some way to have what's happening off the field play into what's going on the field and vice versa. And so because of the kind of tactile objects that I like, I went to cards. So in much the same way that you would draw from a fate deck, but it has that affordance that cards have that dice don't, which is that you can swap out cards. Unlike a dice roll, it's customizable. It's still random, but you can add things into it and take things out of it and change the odds as you go. And I think that's going to give us the kind of mechanic that we need for this, because we need to be able to remove like blockers, remove things that like, Timmy won't pass to Jimmy because he cheated on her girlfriend or whatever to steal from, again, Ted Lasso. You need to be able to remove those things from the deck and add cards into that deck that represent teamwork, so that over the course of the campaign, you have a deck where the odds have changed substantially that reflects kind of the changes that have happened outside the actual sports matches. And I can see you're making faces, and I know what you're going to say. You have
triggered so many thoughts.
You're doing that thing where we said we were just going to design a session, but you're actually designing a game.
I was about to say we're designing a game now. I don't think cards are the right tool, but maybe bag draw mechanic is.
Yeah, look, something like a bag draw mechanic would work as
well. Where like bag draw mechanic can give you a couple different range of success or failure states. And, if your actions impede the other team, you remove cubes from the other team. And if they enhance your teamwork, you add more colors of your own team in, something like that persists across the season. And then when you play against different teams that are better quality, you add more. Rockwell, we're designing a sports movie game.
Look, the reason I like cards is because I think we can do this quite informally. And I think the reason I like cards is because each card can represent a narrative thing that happens in the game that refers back to something that's happened outside it. So dipping in a bag, sure, you get a +1 or a -1, like you get a token. If I draw a card, I can have on there that's like, oh, this is Jamie has learned to give up the spotlight and has like passed to another player, and that's what causes the win. So the cards, because they are bigger and can have words on them, they give you a way to explicitly link out of the match and into the interpersonal stuff and vice versa. Like, I think that's what I love the idea of dipping in a bag. I love how that feels. But I think the fact that you can write things on cards pips it for me. Certainly dice are way out because you cannot add sides to a dice or remove sides from a dice, and you sure as shit can't write on them.
I'd challenge that. You can bump dice up and down by increments. Look.
Just get a really big, like one of those really big novelty dice and just write on each of the faces. I don't hate that actually as a concept. Put a pin in that one. We'll save that one for another game. We've gotten so distracted.
Your resolution mechanic might inform a little bit how you're prepping, is what you're telling me here. If you want to prep with cards, then you want to have some like deck that is manipulatable, that you can write on, that you can like record the outcomes of things, and have that be like the central, effectively the deck becomes the team.
Mm-hmm. It's a deck building game. All sports movies are deck building games.
And it's just about playing the cards you're dealt.
Bigger and bigger generalizations about game genres and film genres. But yeah, I think that idea of a collaborative sort of deck building game is not, I don't think that's far off the vibe that I'm going for. A very light deck building game, but a deck building game nonetheless, where you're working with that idea of probabilities of things coming out of the deck.
Play with me on this then. A resolution of our sports game is going to be relatively quick. Mm-hmm. Where pulling cards and playing them in such a way that it ends up with like a total modifier that pushes us, like, you know, this team has a difficulty of 4 or something like that. And I pull out my cards and I see, I got some penalties. Maybe these are like prompts for you to drop in the game. What did you do to deserve this penalty? Oh, Jamie learned how to share the spotlight. There's a narrative moment that looks like this. And then you end up with like your total value of modifiers or something like that. And if it's above the other team, then you beat them. Huzzah. How are you seeding the interpersonal conflicts between players and rivals in between game time?
Yeah, I think there's some...
And is it drawing from a Quiet Year style deck?
We were going to get to a Quiet Year eventually, but yes, essentially I think there is a version of this which isn't necessarily a traditional RPG and is more of a storytelling game, but where you start with almost like a more end state Quiet Year board, or more actually probably closer to the Deep Forest, which is the sequel, and you start essentially with a team of players and they all already have contempt tokens in front of them. So contempt tokens, if you're not familiar with the Quiet Year, is if you feel your player or your monster in Deep Forest has been snubbed or has not been cared for, has not been taken into account in a particular decision, they can take a token of contempt and that goes on that monster's lair, and they can get rid of it in a bunch of ways. They can get rid of it by acting out, which often causes other monsters to also take on contempt, or they can get rid of it by like reconciling, but that takes a lot of work kind of in game to make that happen. But I almost think we want to start with a full board of contempt, and then our performance in the finale is determined by how much of the interpersonal contempt we're able to clear from the team by the end of the game. But we can only clear so much. We can only do so much work on ourselves before the next match comes up. Mm-hmm. And then I think you also end up looking for a mechanic where you are maybe some of the negatives that you pull from the deck during the game. Maybe it's like, okay, now add some contempt. It's like, you didn't pass to me in that match. Why is it? Like, why did that happen? So you can have the game, what happens in the game, start to inform or start to create problems outside of it as well, which is why, again, a deck, I think, works really well because you can also have cards come out for the opposing team. And so it can be like, well, we screwed that up because that player, that it's just the prompt on the card is like, why did this, player give you the yips so bad?
Mm-hmm.
And that creates something that you then have to turn around and resolve outside the game.
Becomes an artifact, that lives on. All right, so yeah, you're prepping a big old table that correlates to, like, let's call this a subset of a 52 card deck or something. Maybe it's like 2 suits or something along those lines. In the in-between time, you're drawing cards that seeds a conflict. So like the player who draws the card lifts it up. They see it's the 9 of spades. They check the table and the 9 of spades says there's an incident at training that occurs. Pick one player and then you play out the scene. And that determines whether you resolve it constructively or destructively. Like there's something about it in there. And then that card is perhaps forever marked with the outcome of what you did, goes back in the deck. And then when you're actually playing the game, you're shuffling it all up and then you're pulling out the cards to see what modifiers have occurred.
Yeah, what modifiers come up, but also what, baggage comes up as well.
Exactly, yep.
Yeah.
All right, there's a game in that.
Yeah, look, we set out to do an RPG and I think we've designed a storytelling game.
This whole section, we're going to prep an entire game from scratch.
Yes. Look, I think there's other ways we can use these elements as well. Are you ready to maybe talk about systems? It's a weird episode structurally, but do you have other stuff you want to get off your chest?
I think the one thing, because I feel like most of the meat of this is going to be about those interstitial scenes. I want to have like a good old list of different prompts that can set a scene. So just ransacking existing sports movies and be like, where does the conflict come from? You already said this one before. 2 players have the same love interest and that leads to conflict. It's something about the game itself in that this person hogs the spotlight, or this person never changes their tactics and isn't willing to try something new, or this person has beef with that person because they chew too loudly. This one always leaves their sweaty towel on the ground in the locker room. This person acts like a buffoon in public.
Yeah, this person is mean to the towel boy.
Whatever things we can tease from the texture of the game and the atmosphere that surrounds it, that's what I want to have prepped ahead of time to be like, this is how we flesh out how you people act with everything.
And I think depending on how much I feel like my players get it, I'm also going to leave some blanks in there because I think once they start to get into that mindset,
let them suggest their own scenes.
They will absolutely be like, oh, I have a crush on this player's significant other. Like, that's the kind of thing that a player will probably grasp and introduce on their own at some point. So just having some capacity for them to write blanks in as well. So making sure I'm leaving some blanks in that.
When you set up a pick list, that's just implied world building. And then you grasp the structure of what this is supposed to be and be like, oh, I can choose my own thing. This is just like the foundation upon which it's built. Yep. Yeah, so I'd absolutely have that prepped, and I would have my contingencies for how do I frame the win condition as it changes and evolves throughout our series of play.
And of course, having our team and not so much our team, but definitely our rival teams and a ladder prepped for us to physically manipulate as well.
So I would want to have probably at least 2 characters for each team with their quirks, where it's like one is the team captain and one is the equivalent of the lieutenant. So
that one guy.
Yeah, exactly. You have just enough to be able to be like, I can flesh them out and they have these characteristics. This is the team that you love to hate because they're dicks. These are the teams who are like more obsessed with the game outside the game and they love the like stardom. This is the team who's also in it to win and is mostly good-hearted, something like that.
Again, another thing that Pyre does really well is it has all of these teams who very much have their own personalities and who you interact with in interesting ways. Yeah, one to raid for sure there.
All right, let's talk systems. I have some broad thoughts.
Me too.
I often go first. would you like to take the floor this time?
Yeah, look, probably if I were to sit down and do this, I would probably have a shot at doing some kind of horrible quiet year mod. But it would be, as we kind of discussed, it's like, we're now designing a game. That would be like a complete rewrite of that game. It would be a new game that borrows some ideas from it, really. If I were going to run this in an existing RPG system, I've got two thoughts. One of them in a shot for everyone who is drinking along at home with the drinking game. One of them is Fate, because I think it can do that putting of things, like writing down of abstract grievances and then invoking them for mechanical effect really well. You can write things down on character sheets and strike them off as part of play. And you can also write things down that are just like aspects of the setting or aspects of the other team, and invoke against those, and the players can also invoke against those. And so I think it just lends itself quite well to that. The other one is it's a game called Kill Him Faster.
Oh, yes, I was thinking the same!
Which I kickstarted a while ago, and it's like, it's so close to the top of the list of, we have a spreadsheet, because of course we do, of like the games we're going to play. We're going to get to it so soon. But basically the premise of Kill Him Faster is that time travel has been invented, and then speedrunning killing Hitler becomes the world's like most popular sport. But Kill Him Faster has a couple of things that I really, again, haven't played it, but just it does a lot of things that I like. It's very much centered around a team rather than an individual, like than individual players, which I think fits it really well. It is designed essentially to evoke something that feels like a deranged team sport. So it does a lot of this stuff kind of mechanically, which works quite well. And it has in-game concepts for seasons and rounds and the ladder and that kind of stuff. But one thing that I think is quite cool about it is that it also includes sort of explicit mechanics for hype and how popular your team is in the sort of televised aspect of the sport, which I think is really interesting, and again adds another like interesting avenue to the what does success look like. It becomes another thing to manage, another thing to try and maximize, another thing to draw on. So I would probably, if I had a hankering to run a sports game, I would probably run Kill Him Faster, because that also solves the neat question of like, as you said before, what sport are we going to run? Do we even need to decide what sport we're going to run? Like, no, we don't. We absolutely don't need to choose a sport. And in fact, we don't even need to have a real sport. We can have the entirely fake made up sport of killing Hitler and still tell this kind of story. So probably that would be my first choice. Not that I'm not mad keen on like writing a weird deck building-y, feelingsy, Ted Lasso-y, like quiet year hack. But if I just wanted something that I could grab and run with, it would be Kill Him Faster. How about you?
Look, I had Kill Him Faster on my list as well for very similar reasons, right? It just structurally has elements of that interstitial time, of that play with the fans and getting into altercations outside the sport. So very, very much on the list. But yeah, full disclosure, I too have not played that one. Probably could have given it a shot recently, but instead we played Tupperware the Masquerade.
Instead we played Pat Self on Back, own game that we designed by accident.
No, my first thought that came to mind, which I made a sneaky little comment in there. I was thinking of this in the prep stage, resolving the entire match with like a single dice roll. There is a game called Aegon, which is about Greek heroes sailing through a different archipelago of islands. The system has already been used in entirely...
Hold on. Are you saying The Odyssey is a sports movie?
Yep. You heard it here first, folks. The original sports movie.
All of Western literature is a sports movie. Sorry, I interrupted. You were saying sailing through the Greek Isles.
So in that one, you roll up your characters, which are like very simple, right? Your characters only have like a couple different attributes to them. They can gain favor of the gods, which could easily be reflavored as audience members or fans. And you pit yourself against your fellow Greek heroes when you go up against these challenges that are quite structured. And the goal is to resolve the challenge on an island, one island per session, and then you jump back onto your ship and you sail to the next island. This has already been adapted into a sports-like game called Deathmatch Island, where there's like direct equivalencies of a lot of things. And that's much more flavored around the Hunger Games. So you've got, you're on the island and then you're being televised as you wake up with few memories and now have to fight for your survival. And spoilers if you're ever going to play and not GM Deathmatch Island, but it has a structure for how to play it through straight, as if it's like the first movie in the Hunger Games and you just have to survive and that's the game. And then it has a new game plus mode that's you're all actually working together trying to break the game. And I think that type of structure can easily be pulled across to this, where you've got like dice rolls are sparse, but extremely meaningful. You're all working together to support each other, but previously you might have had like individual tendencies. Now you're working together as a team. I think it's already got a lot of backbone in there that allows you to build this off. But I also have a couple of other recommendations that I haven't played.
All right, hit me with them. Rapid fire, let's go.
Right.
Let me guess, Blades in the Dark.
Look, the thought crossed my mind. I was absolutely like, if you wanted a little bit more meat to your sports game, it's competing clocks, right? And you just set different difficulties based on the team. So a really easy to beat team has a really high clock that they need to fill, and yours is relatively static. A really hard to beat team has a really small clock that fills very quickly.
There's bits that work. Like the whole concept of jobs and downtime really works. The whole concept of that engagement role at the start really helps. That like even the flashbacks, right? The flashing back to like, and here's where I learned to not hog the spotlight. But you're right, it does really want you to be spending more time in the match and narrating what's going on in the match much more, which is not necessarily something that we want to do.
I think it can be done, but it'd be like an 80% job. You have to write some custom playbooks for your sport of choice. But it does have like, the heat mechanic could easily be used for penalty cards or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, there's quite a few opportunities in there, but I think to play out the sports game would be a bit of a burden on the GM. So ultimately I decided not. What I did think is all of what we've described sounds super powered by the apocalypse, where it's like, absolutely, it's so character driven and like the development of the character is the development of the team. And I was having a little sticky beak and found one called Varsity, which at a first glance looks pretty good, but alas, I haven't actually played it. The second one in rapid fire mode, I think you might like. It's in part an Australian developer.
All right.
It won a PAX Oz Indie Showcase some years ago. It's called Fight with Spirit. And it draws a lot of influence from sports movie, but also sports anime.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the same vibe, where, the sport doesn't matter nearly so much.
This looks great.
And it has a lot of prompt cards that have these scenarios in them for you to resolve, and is very much about the personal growth along the way, from what I've read in the quick start rules.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just looking at some of the cards. I'm like, set up, like flashback to the last time this brought you joy. Why do you struggle to capture that feeling? Ask a teammate, do you feel the joy of this right now? Teammate must give an answer. If you do feel the joy, you may contribute one spirit to their draw. If you do, answer, how do you share your joy with them? This could be a moment to embrace the feelings welling up inside. You choose rein it in or fly exuberantly. Like, this is perfect. Time cut short. Break the news that you will be leaving or find a way to stay with the team. It's far too soon to say goodbye. You thought you had more time, but your family is moving away. You don't know when or if you'll be back. You haven't told anyone and the clock is ticking. Who have you misled about your future here? Why is your family moving away, and what familiar place will be hard to farewell? It's perfect.
It looks pretty legit. But again, haven't played it. Can't solidly recommend without that experience. But that's my take. A reflavored Deathmatch Island / Aegon, a Varsity powered by the Apocalypse, or a Fight with Spirit, which is its own thing.
Yeah, wow, okay. That's so many more game options than I thought we were going to have going into this. Like, that is a cornucopia of mechanical options.
Very different implementations, and a bag draw mechanic that I've just made up, and a custom deck builder that you've made up. Yep.
Yeah. Who would have thought? Who would have thought this thing that it was a highly fertile ground for filmmakers is also a highly fertile ground for game design?
All right. Dangerous question.
Yep.
Would you play it in 5e?
Of course not.
No, not in the slightest. That sounds heinous.
It makes no sense.
Unless the sport was just monster killing.
Oh, look, I've done that thing where I'm like, of course not. And I'm like, but what if you did like dungeon running as a competitive sport and treat it the way that like do for sport what Akink did for corporate culture?
I kind of am doing that right now in my Shadow of the Weird Wizard game, where the premise of this town is that there are 4 big towers, each one is its own dungeon, and the town's only 30 years old. People flock to it to go into the dungeons and retrieve stuff. And it's become a highly structured event where each tower is controlled by a guild, and the guilds take a cut of all the treasure that comes out of it that's used to fund the town. Lots of people going into the dungeon all at once is like a special event that happens once every couple of years, and that's where my players are. So on their random encounter tables, maybe they just bump into another rival adventuring party, which has been really fun to spin them up. But I think I would lose fun for me if I had to turn it into structured sport event instead of fun reason to go into the dungeon and steal shit.
Yeah, look, I think that's where I would land as well, is you would be doing a one of those campaigns where you like very much take the premise of 5e and say like, and there's a little bit of awareness inside the world that this is a bit silly. So yes, there are dungeon running crews who compete to like compete in quote marks to get the most, the best loot. And then you kind of structure your campaign with a sports movie in mind, but aren't necessarily going deep into the mechanics of it the way we have in this.
It's like, not supported by the mechanics.
Yeah, and you can take the very high level narrative structure of like, yeah, you're a group of underdogs, and you've got some you've got some rivalries, and you've very much got like delving into the dungeon and downtime, and like you can bring in a lot of those sport movie elements without going fully in and doing a sport movie the way we've kind of assumed for the show.
Yeah, my run right now feels much less sports movie and much more Pokemon.
Bring it on.
Where your rival just shows up and you have a big biff with them, and then they go, "Smell you later," and then you see them again at some other point.
I mean, Pokemon maybe also a sports movie. What is a gym leader? What is the Elite Four, if not the finale?
So ultimately, I think you could run it in 5e. I wouldn't. And I'm doing something very similar in a 5e-like game, and it wouldn't be that much more work to bridge across to it, but I still wouldn't.
Would you run it?
Strictly as is? Probably not, to be honest. Despite this deep dive and all of these different mechanics that we could pull out to support it, just based purely on opportunity cost, I don't think I would.
It's probably a yes for me, but only because I really want to run Kill Him Faster, and I think that will bring a lot of these vibes to the forefront. So like, yes, but with a very specific sport in mind. All right, shall we wrap this bad boy up?
I think so. Thank you for listening to Platonics this week as we delved into structured media film.
Structured contest media.
Contest media.
Yeah, thanks for bearing with us with this one. It's been a little bit chaotic, but hopefully quite fun for you as well. So where can people find more of this nonsense, Jords?
Oh, like here on the podcast? Also at platonics.net. And please come join us in the Discord. We love having banter about the stupid ideas we come up with as well. Like Tupperware the Masquerade was an evolution of one of our episodes that had nothing to do with those things. Maybe now a quiet football season will also appear in the Discord as well. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. Jump onto our website and you'll find the subscribe button there, where we tend to write a little bit longer form dissertations that might not relate to any particular piece of media, but are just about game design and game structure in general. I don't do this bit.
I know.
I'm fumbling up.
No, you're doing fine. Keep going.
You can also find us on all the usual socials, the ones that matter at least, including Reddit, particularly /RPG. Come say hi to me if you find me in the wild. Blue Sky and Mastodon. Do we also have a Threads?
Yeah, but
We don't go there.
I don't know that anyone actually knows we have a Threads. Even I don't know we have a Threads.
Did I miss anything in my list?
No, you did really well. I'm proud of you.
We love getting requests. It does inform what we tend to choose for upcoming episodes. And with enough lead time, it means we get to watch more movies or read more books or play more video games that have inspired the thought for the vibe you want to evoke at your table.
Cool. I think that's it.
All right, we've just completed the road to regionals. Off to nationals!
Podcast Nationals. Gonna win the podcast grand finale.
I guess that would be the Ennies, but we would need to be nominated first to even enter that competition.
Hey, look, since we're still recording, nominate us for an Annie.
You've got many months before they swing back around again.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? You might be listening to this at some other point in time. So whatever year you're listening to this, just nominate us again.
If the Annies are currently open, go nominate us for one. Thanks. All right, I'll catch you next month. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye!
Bark. 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 Bark.
Crufts. Sports movie?
I don't know what Crufts is.
It's Show Dog Championships.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. No, I'm back in now. I'm doing it. That's the sport I'm interested in. The sport is just dogs. And you're the scrappy mutt going up against the purebreds.
It's great because Crufts sounds like it should be like a GURPS, right? It sounds like one of those really old, like
Terrible
old school
name.
RPG acronyms. It's like, no, it's just the name of the dog show.